So the first principle of creation of wealth is whether you're talking about family, in your family, as a nation, at whatever level, the first principle is this: take a long-term perspective, take a long-term view. Don't try to live from month to month or day to day. Take a long-term view. And this is biblical, because if you go through the story of Joseph, you will find that God created a platform for Joseph in Egypt, where Joseph would be the instrument he would use to bring Israel into wealth. Remember? Israel came to Egypt and lived in Goshen and became a great nation. But that plan of God had started with God many years before giving Joseph a dream, which he shared with his brethren and made them jealous because they thought they were going to bow before him. And so they conspired together and threw him into a pit. He ended up in slavery. He ended up in prison, and eventually on the platform that God had given him. So, take a long-term perspective of wealth. I'll give you a story or two on this. Somebody came and told me recently that last year in August, a friend of his, not an acquaintance, a friend, somebody that he was close to, who knew quite well, came to him and said, "Please help me. My rent is due in August." This is last year. "My rent is due in August, and the money I had set aside to pay my rent, I had to spend on a family emergency. Can you help?" And this is a friend. And so his friend gave him the money for the rent and said, "This is a difficult time. I won't lend it to you. I'm giving it to you." Wasn't that a good friend? Okay. Come July this year, his friend comes back again and says, "My rent is due in August." So this time his friend says, "What have you been doing? September, October, November. What have you been doing? Didn't you know that in August the following year you would have to pay your rent again?" You see, and because we often take a short-term view of things, sometimes young people get into marriage, they love one another, and they jump into marriage. But they haven't planned their economic future, their finances together. They don't have a long-term plan. And because of that, sometimes the marriages go awry. So take a long-term view. Plan well ahead.